Hello everyone, welcome back to A Message of Hope. My name is Monet Souza and I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Today I'm joined with Dan and we're going to be talking about patience. Before we get started, can you open us up in prayer?
Absolutely. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, so we're going to be completely raw and vulnerable with all of you watching. Dan and I actually just filmed a 20-minute video for this, but what a gift it is to be refilming to teach each and every one of us what patience is. Because here we are talking for 20 minutes about what patience is supposed to look like as Catholics and for each and every one of us. And immediately upon praying for patience, we were tested whether or not we were going to act on patience. So Dan, we're going to be discussing what patience is for you, for those watching, what we can really just walk away with. And here we are experiencing it right here and now. So what a beautiful time to just really dive deeper into this.
Absolutely, yeah, of course. The Lord works in mysterious ways.
Yes, he does.
Elwood Blues.
So what's patience to you? You know, what does that journey of patience look like right now? Maybe what the past looked like to present day, so we can just get a greater sense of how we can take on patience for our own lives.
Yeah. For me, patience is just having the ability to just kind of like take a step back, just kind of like take your emotions kind of out of the moment and just kind of give the situation up to God, whether, you're trying to make a big decision, whether, you're trying to figure out, what your next job is going to be, or where you're going to go to school next, or, what you want to study, or how you want, something else to go in your life. And it can be, there are moments you have to be patient over a long period of time, like, like the obviously application processes and so forth. And there are moments where you have to be patient, like in the short term, maybe something doesn't go your way and you have to just kind of reset and be, okay, what can I do about it now? Right. And that's really what patience is all about. It's just making the best decision in the moment and not worrying about the things you can't control. And if it's something that you can't control, just, put it on the back burner and just kind of let God take care of it.
Exactly. And thank God we have a good and loving Father who is patience himself. So in the moments we're not patient with ourselves, with God, or with others, he's patient with us. And he's going to fill in those gaps of moments where, God, I'm very impatient right now. You need to take over and fill that impatience with your patience. And he will. But we need to be readily available to allow him to work and to be receptive to him working in our lives. So I know I have my story. Someone watching has their story. But was there a moment where it hit you, wow, okay, I do struggle with impatience? Was it someone who maybe brought it to your attention? Was it something that came to your attention during prayer? What was that like?
For me, I think that when I really started to kind of take ownership of like my own prayer life, this is only in like the last probably a year and a half now, I'd say, where I really started, like I always had my faith, it was always there with me. Like, I always, I remain going to mass and stuff, my family is very religious, very Catholic, but I think in the last year and a half, I really started to embrace my faith and really started praying on certain virtues and certain graces.
Right.
So I thought that the best way to do it is kind of pray for humility, because it's the offset to pride, and pride is the root of all sins. And so I started praying for humility a lot, and then I started thinking about the other graces and the other virtues I should be praying for. And when I, saw patience, I was looking at some list, something like that, and I saw patience, and I was just like, wow, patience, having patience just kind of over a long period of time, at least for me, is how I ended up in the situation that I am now, where, before, maybe I had a track that I thought my life was going to go, and, it was all in God's time. I didn't realize how much control God had over my life in that moment, and just over a long period of time, I just realized, just by having patience and just by making the best decision in the moment, I couldn't be at a better place than I am right now, I think.
Yes, and for many of you watching, maybe you don't know if you're struggling with patience or not. Maybe someone who you're living with or a friend you're in the friend group with is going to bring it to your attention, because that's exactly how it was for me. My mom had to bring it to my attention and say, hey, you're slamming your door locked. Hey, you're struggling with patience in these moments. And first I took it as, whoa, easy. Like, this is just how I deal with life. And, it was through her slow chipping away at that pride that you're talking about, through that impatience that I was experiencing, where she was saying, you need to take a moment to breathe, count to 10, go on a walk, take a breath, avoid slamming the door. And these seem so far off notions that she was presenting to me. But as I was like, okay, maybe I'll try it, I started realizing that actually worked. That just slowing your heart rate, just taking a step away from the physical situation or from the phone call or from the decision you're about to make or from the person that's aggravating you, and just stepping away, you actually come back with a clearer mind and a little bit more peace in your heart, where you can think more rationally, because sometimes we're irrational beings because of sin. But God wants us to take a moment to breathe. Think of how Our Lady will act or would have acted here on earth, or how St. Joseph would have acted. Yeah. And we'll learn from them. The closer we draw to our faith, the closer we draw to these saints, will allow more peace to be within our heart. And absolutely, if we're truly God-fearing people and people who are striving for heaven, and we're wearing our Carry Your Cross shirts and gear and whatever it is, or our crucifixes around our necks, hopefully we're living out these virtues. Because if we're just wearing these clothes for show and our actions aren't matching up, then someone from an onlooker's perspective is going to be like, wait a minute, this guy for real? Like, this guy an actual Catholic, if he's impatient, or this girl or whatever. So how can we begin to show people and to show patience to others through our words and actions?
That's actually really fun that you bring that up. I was reading recently one of my favorite priests, Saint Jose Maria Escriva, the great Father Wayne. Trying to turn me on to him at least. But I was reading something. It was like, it was about character. I think I was reading the Furrow. I think that was I was reading the Furrow, and he was talking about the character, about having character, and you shouldn't say like, oh, maybe you slamming doors, or screaming, or getting physical or something like that. Like, oh, that's just my character. That's just my my way of dealing with things. And he says, it is your lack of character that you're having these outbursts, and you're doing these stupid, having these, certain moments in your life where you're dealing with the problem like in an irrational way, but in that moment, like, your emotions kind of take over, and like, to you it's totally rational. It's like, oh, I'm mad, of course I'm going to scream. Oh, I'm in a bad mood and people know it, of course I'm going to slam doors and stomp my feet and do all these ridiculous childish things that you see adults do every single day. I know, at least I do, just from like working in a restaurant.
Sure.
Sometimes it goes someone's way, and the whole restaurant all of a sudden knows about it, because that person can't deal with that. They don't have that that patience just to be like, okay, what happened? Like, okay, my steak was a little overcooked. Like, no big deal. You can get a new one, or you can just suck it up and eat it. It's a steak. You're still gonna eat it. Still gonna taste the same, right?
Yeah, right.
Right. But I think for me, just like kind of having like taking like a physical step back in those moments where it's like, I know from working in a restaurant, I have like a lot of different situations with people, where something doesn't go their way, or they're not like super happy about like how their night is going. And like, sometimes it's my fault. Sometimes it's not my fault, but either way, I still have to give that person the attention that the problem needs, and do my absolute best to kind of, keep the situation under control. And this isn't just like, I've learned a lot just because I've worked in a restaurant since, I was an early teenager, but just like this helps so much like in life, where it's like, if you just take like a physical, just like a 6-inch step back, it kind of relieves like that pressure, relieves like that tension. If you're like, can you imagine if you were in an argument and you took a step forward? I mean, the next thing that's coming forward is their right hand. Right. You know what I mean?
That's true.
Or if you stand there and you're not moving at all. I mean, have you ever tried to like, argue with like, when you're a student, you try to argue with a teacher and they're just standing there and they're not moving? It's like, like you're not getting your way on this, right? Yeah. Whereas if you're talking with someone and maybe you take like just a physical like 6-inch step, back, or 4-inch step back, it kind of just like, put some air between you. You can breathe, you can think, and the person might start to be like, hey, you know what? He's taking a step back. He's thinking about maybe what I'm saying. And then all of a sudden, like, it can be contagious. Patience, I think, is 100% contagious, because once you, are quiet and you just kind of, let the situation kind of like happen, not in like a, completely submissive way, but almost in like a passive way, where it's like you're going to give it up to God and just kind of let God kind of handle the situation. I think that's just like super, super key because
Definitely.
most things just aren't in your control at all.
Exactly. Because
yeah,
you keep saying, it all comes back to the present moment.
yeah,
And that's all we have.
absolutely, yeah. I know, like in today's like world, I know it's kind of cliche. Everyone says like, oh, life is so like fast paced, like everything is instant. We all have like iPhones on our, our cell. Sorry, we all have smartphones and stuff on our cell. I don't want to plug a brand that isn't sponsoring us. But like we all have like smartphones and stuff, right? And it's like, everything is so instant communication, the news, stuff that happens, everyone knows about it immediately, right?
Right.
Because everything is just so like impatient, like we were saying. I don't think that I think to live in this 21st century, everyone needs to practice some sort of patience. But I don't want that to be like misconstrued or interpreted as someone else as like being hesitant. Because I think that there's like a key difference, like patience and hesitating are two very, very different things, just from my opinion. Like when you're patient, that means you don't know the right thing to do, or it's uncertain, or you don't want to make a move like too soon. And that's patience is a grace. You're giving it up to God. Hesitant is knowing the right thing to do, but not doing it and not wanting to do it.
Or going back and forth in your head, do I do it? Do I not do it?
Exactly.
And then you get caught up in that mind space rather than physically doing whatever
exactly.
is in
and
front of you.
That's where you lead into the problem where, people say like, oh, that's where people get like, confused between like patience and like hesitation, or like, I can't be patient. I have to do this now. I can't, I can't wait for the job that I want to come along. I have to take this job because they're the one that offered me first, right? Or I can't wait for, this school to accept me. I have to take this thing first,
Right.
And it's like you just kind of have to gauge that. You got to make the best decision in the moment. Or if the best decision for you is to wait a little bit longer, that's what you're gonna have to do.
Right. And think back to the times where you did exercise the patience. How did that turn out? Maybe it turned out really well. Bring yourself back to that moment and apply it to the present and say, you know what, I was patient before, and it actually wasn't the worst thing. Things actually fell into place. There's actually more peace. And then you can act in that same patience with whatever you're faced with here and now. So I totally agree with you, Dan.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
I mean, yeah, of course.
So let's start going through some useful tools that people can start taking away at home so they can start applying this to their lives.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think like, taking that step back is also really important. But also just like realizing that, you're in your path of your life, like spiritually, maybe, like in your school life, maybe you're at the gym or something like that. Like you're in your own like physical path, right? Trying to get in shape while someone else is on their own. Like you can't compare. My cousin always says like, you can't compare your beginning to someone else's middle. And I always thought that was like pretty deep. It's like, yeah, you know what? Like, I'm a transfer student. Like, but when it's all said and done, I'm going to be, 5 years done with a bachelor's degree. But that's because, when I left high school, I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to do something else. And when God kind of told me in His own way, I want to go in the military, God, said, hey, hold on a second. Like, you have to wait.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, all right, that's fine. Now I'm just kind of in that waiting process right now. But I was like, all right, I'll just go to college. I'll do the next best thing. I'll make the best decision in that moment. It ended up being on my graduation day. I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to, I'll be going to community college or whatever. And then, through that road, it's like, you just keep having that patience and being like, all right, what's the best step now? What can I do today? What can I do? What can I plan to do tomorrow? What plan to do this weekend? And when that comes, do it. Don't be hesitant. Don't like wait on it. Don't be like, oh, I'm going to be patient again. It's like, no, when the time is right, do it. Take care of it.
Yeah.
But I think just like taking a deep breath, seeing how far you've come, right?
Yeah.
What do they always say? Like all those, I keep seeing that all the time on social media. It's like, you would, if you could see yourself where you are now 10 years ago or 5 years ago, you'd be probably like, you'd be really proud of yourself of like, oh, hey, I actually made it that far. Like if you just kind of took a step back every once in a while and just be like, hold on a second, I'm in my own situation, I'm in my own journey. Right. Someone else I'm talking to, right? Like you're in your own situation, your own journey. I can't compare myself to you, right? I can try to learn from you. Maybe, you can try to learn from me, or maybe we can try to share things with each other. And that goes for like in any situation, but you can't like compare yourself. So when you're in that situation where it's like, you're getting frustrated with someone else, just be like, be patient. Be like, hold on a second, hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, he didn't know about that. Maybe she didn't know about this. Maybe, maybe I didn't know about that, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And again, looping it back to what we mentioned before, you cling close to Our Lady and St. Joseph. The people who modeled patience well followed them. Who are we modeling our lives after? Is it the superstar? Is it the celebrity? Is it the person who's promoting impatience? Who
Yeah.
are we following after? And if it's not people like Our Lady, St. Joseph, and the saints, then begin to direct your eyes onto them and the lives they lived and are living still in heaven. Pray the rosary on a regular basis. The rosary brings so much peace, patience, and really just, again, like my mom had said, just take a moment to count to 10 and it will calm your breathing. And, the wisdom of our moms is super, super helpful. So listen to those around you. If someone is pointing out that you're impatient, take it with a little bit of humility and say, okay, maybe I need to work on this a bit. And don't get discouraged with yourself. I'm still working on patience. This is something that we are constantly working towards because, again, we're sinful, flawed human beings.
I remember this one moment I was working in a restaurant, and the waitress that I was working with, at the end of the night, I was just like, I was just sitting there, and like I was trying to, have that, moment of self-reflection, just being like, so I asked her, I was like, how do you think I did tonight, right? Like, how do you think, like, I just kind of started. I think I was about like 6 or 7 months in, like, serving, right? Like, which is considered like new because most servers that, like, at least I've worked with have done it for at least like 5 years. So, I was just new to it. Hadn't done it for a year yet, and I was like, how did I do? And she ripped into me. She was like, you don't do this, you don't stock these, you don't, you're slow to your tables, you don't do this enough, you don't do that enough, you don't help people out, you're not running enough food, you're not stocking enough shelves, you're not, running the glasses. Whole laundry list, just berated me. And in that moment, like, I got so mad. I was like, I'm coming to this girl, just asking her for a simple, like, how do you think I'm doing? And she's ripping into me. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I thought she was going to be like, tell me, like, I didn't think she was going to rip into me, like, take out her day on me, right? And then it was like, on the drive home, I was like, wait a second. Yeah, I probably should have ran that food at that moment. Yeah, I probably should have done this at that time. I should have, been better with my tables. I could have cut out this less conversation and maybe more action. And then it was like the next time I ended up working with her, all that was just, that was an opportunity for me to be like, did you learn from something? Did you have patience with yourself in that moment? And I came in, I was like, I remember the first thing that it was like, I remember the first thing that she kind of pointed out, she was like, oh, you don't fill up, it was something stupid, like, you don't fill up the honey mustard when you walk in. And at that point, like, that was pretty petty, but it was like, it made sense, right? Because it's like, someone's got to do it, right?
Sure.
So it was like the first thing I did, I was like, I'm going for that. I'm filling that up, and, then the rest of the night, I was just like, I'm doing as much as I possibly can, at least that I remember that I wasn't doing before. And then you have that conversation later on, it's like, how do you think that I did now? And it was like completely different. It was like, well, honestly, you made a lot of improvements, and this is where you did well, and this is where you did bad. But it was like, you had that, but it all started with just me being like, all right, how do you think I did? And in that moment, it was super hard for me to be like, okay, now I'm actually getting criticism,
Sure.
And I had to kind of just be like, all right, like, now I get it. Like, wisdom of our moms, like you were saying, like, real strength is in restraint. My mom used to always say that when we were growing up, just like, when you're in that situation, you just kind of got to hold yourself back a little bit, kind of take a deep breath. And everything will work out in the end as long as you're just as long as you're making the best decision at that one moment.
Exactly. So maybe we continue to pray for patience, take those deep breaths when necessary, and strive for heaven. Dan, thank you so much for coming on to A Message of Hope.
Absolutely, thank you.
And everyone will plan on seeing you next week for a new video. God bless.